Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Melissa, and this channel is all about psychiatric drug withdrawal reactions and recovery, and it draws on my 7 years of experience in this community, as well as my own personal journey to recovery, and the probably thousands of conversations I've had at this point, both formally as a coach and informally just throughout my years in this community. And the purpose of this channel is to provide hope in what often feels like a hopeless situation and to talk about topics and themes that come up regularly in my conversations with people. And so none of it is meant to constitute medical advice, it's just drawing on these experiences. So this video is going to be a bit of a story time, and I think it's important because so many people that are in this community have questions about what the recovery really looks like for others. And so I'm going to talk about that and my own experience today. But before I get into it, I want to mention that I am doing coaching. So I have 30-minute calls and 60-minute calls. And if you're interested in chatting, I will put my direct booking link in the description of this video. So many people ask me, like, is what I'm experiencing normal for this part of the journey? And I always say nothing about this experience is normal, but there's definitely things that are normal for this experience. And people often get really scared, obviously, because it feels like, they once had agency over their body physically and mentally, and now they don't. And that's a very scary experience. And similar to what people with autoimmune diseases can feel, because it's like you get told your body is attacking itself, which is very scary, and you want to know how to stop it. And it makes you have this sense of loss of control over your own body, which is terrifying for many people. And one of the things that happens for most people in this community is that symptoms tend to morph, they change, new symptoms pop up, old symptoms return, and it's a very scary part of the experience and the non-linear journey to recovery. And this story time is about, so I was 15 months off of my second set of drugs when I had a baby. And if you know my story, I was in citalopram withdrawal, which was a drug I took for 7 years, did a 4-week taper, was in withdrawal, didn't understand it for a long time, and really, actually for quite a long time, ended up reinstating. It went horribly wrong, took at least 10 other drugs, was reacting to all of them, had a then second withdrawal off those and benzos. And really, the mental symptoms I experienced were by far the most intense, but I also had neurological symptoms. I ended up on disability with drug-induced diagnoses, akathisia, movement disorder. And so my only escape for a while was sex, and that was how I ended up pregnant, which I didn't think was a possibility for me based on my age and my health status from years of chronic disease and out of whack hormones and withdrawal and just being in this chronic fight or flight state. So I ended up getting pregnant when I was, I think, 8 months off or something like that. And then I had my baby at 15 months off because I was only pregnant for 7 months because I had an emergency C-section early because I was at very high risk of death. And a very interesting thing happened, and it still kind of baffles me to this day. So again, if you know my story, I had these diagnoses, clearly had neurological problems from these drugs, severe mental symptoms, and it was just torture for a very, very long time for me. And when I was pregnant, obviously high risk because I was 39 and into 40 years old and had hormone problems for years, and then had been in withdrawal and drug-induced health conditions for years as well. And when I was about 7 months pregnant, and keep in mind, like, I was terrified of the whole pregnancy and birthing experience because of what I went through during my withdrawal and the sensitivities I had. I was very drug averse. I hired a doula with the little money that I had, who ended up being just an absolute godsend for me and was helping me to navigate this journey as naturally as possible. And so I wasn't taking the things that were recommended. And I'm not suggesting that that's right for other people, but for me, unless it was a direct threat to myself or the fetus, I avoided it. And so when I was about 7 months pregnant, or yeah, I was right around 7 months, or maybe even six months, I started showing signs of high blood pressure and preeclampsia. And so at that point, it was not severe, but I was put on beta blockers, which I knew that I tolerated because I was taking beta blockers for akathisia the year before, and I was okay. I know not everybody is, but I was. And so I wasn't really scared of beta blockers. I took them exactly as prescribed. And after about 2 weeks of taking them and having these signs of preeclampsia and high blood pressure, I was starting to swell quite badly. So my face became swollen. I had really bad swelling in my hands and my legs and my feet. And I know a lot of women develop swelling in pregnancy, but mine was quite intense for, I wasn't even 8 months or 9 months pregnant. I was 6 and 7 months and I was experiencing this swelling. And so, and then in my last month of pregnancy, which wasn't actually my last month because normally the 9th month is the end, but I was about 7.5 months in and experiencing all this swelling and high blood pressure. I was on these high blood pressure medications, and then I was wearing compression stockings, and I started developing like abnormal nerve sensations in what was the last month for me of pregnancy. And it got quite debilitating. And in the last couple of weeks of my pregnancy, when I was taking these medications, I ended up needing home care. I ended up getting Meals on Wheels. My mom had to shower me because I was starting to lose proper sensation in my hands, which was terrifying because obviously I was going to have a baby and needed full use of my hands. And up to this point in my withdrawal experience, I had not experienced numbness. I had like that feeling of bursting through my skin. I had sensations of like burning and a lot of the symptoms associated with withdrawal, but I didn't have numbness and like loss of physical function of any of my body parts to that point. And so it was very scary to be swollen and then to be starting to feel like I was losing control of my hands. And I was like, okay, I was seeing my doctor very regularly because of my risk levels. And they're like, okay, you're swollen. It's causing compression on the nerves. You potentially have carpal tunnel syndrome, and which can be common in pregnancy, especially towards the end. And so I was doing all of this research into carpal tunnel, and I was kind of becoming obsessed with it. But as I was seeing my doctor, they were like, it doesn't quite fit the typical presentation of carpal tunnel. It's similar, but not quite the same. So anyway, I have the baby. It's an emergency C-section. I end up developing HELP syndrome, which is the most severe form of preeclampsia. It affects the liver. I was turning yellow. It was a medical emergency. So I ended up being rushed 3 hours by ambulance to the nearest children's hospital. I gave birth that night. It was on Mother's Day of 2022. And I ended up being in the hospital for 8 days. My daughter was in the NICU, and there's a lot of risk with again, my advanced age and all of my health problems, my very long-term diabetes. My baby, I believe, had low blood sugar. So she was in the NICU. It's kind of a blur now, but it was a pretty traumatic birth, to say the least. And I remember just being so concerned with the swelling. And they kept telling me in the hospital that will go away as the swelling goes down. So once the swelling in your hands and your arms, which is so bad, and my legs goes away, then these sensations in your hands will go away as well. And that didn't happen. It actually got worse. I was released from the hospital after 8 days. I am not able to use my hands. And my mom was with me. And so she is buckling my baby into the car seat. And I'm just like, how on earth am I going to take care of this child? And so I am getting more and more desperate. I'm making very regular appointments with my doctor. And not only am I losing sensation, like my hands numb, but also my hands would go limp. Like I would try to pick something up, like say this bottle of lotion, and it would just go like this. Because I didn't have proper sensation in my hands. Like it just was very numb feeling. And the only proper sensation I had was in my non-dominant hand in these two fingers. And so it's very hard to try to take care of a baby and do up like zippers and diapers when you have literally these two fingers to use. And so I was just so desperate to take care of my child that I was like an animal. I mean, I was doing up her sleepers like this and then with my mouth. That was the only way I could, and I was using my arms to try to maneuver her. So I was unable to breastfeed. And again, very desperate because nobody could tell me what was wrong. And I had an absolutely angelic doctor at the time, my GP. He was the one I've talked about so many times on this channel. And I was just making appointment after appointment, and my symptoms were morphing and changing. And I started developing just this fiery stinging in the backs of my hands. They were like numb, but also like numb to the touch, but it felt like I had almost like a glove or like a layer of Vaseline over my hands. But then I would just get this fiery stinging sensation, like fire ants or bee stings on the back of my hands, and also like down my forearms. So I would sit in the rocking chair that I had and just be laying my forearms on ice. And so I'm like, it was so scary because I'm like, what is wrong with my nerves? And so my doctor's like, I don't know. Because at that point, the swelling was gone in my hands. Like visibly, I was not swollen anymore. So I'm like, what is wrong with my nerves? And so I ended up seeing a surgeon. I demanded to see a surgeon. Saw one, and he set me up for carpal tunnel surgery, even though he's like, I don't think that's what's wrong. This is not the normal presentation of carpal tunnel. And he would like, I'd have my hands on his table and he'd be touching certain points in my hands and down my arm. And I would just be jumping away because it felt like if you've ever touched like a doorknob and you get that shock, like it was just, I couldn't handle any amount of touch anywhere down like my nerve. But it was like, it was so weird, like the way it was presenting. And my doctor was at a loss, and the surgeon was going to refuse surgery. And I said, no, you are doing surgery. I'm a single mom. I haven't really been functional the last month of my pregnancy. My daughter's a newborn. I'm unable to breastfeed. I was crying. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. So he does the surgery and it doesn't help. At least it didn't appear to help in the normal trajectory of healing from carpal tunnel. And I ended up with steroid injections. And even though I was sensitive, I was so desperate. I was like, I will put up with any and all reactions. I just need to be able to take care of my child. And I was okay after I got the injections and the surgery, but I wasn't better. My symptoms weren't improving. And again, they seemed to be getting worse. And so again, I was back in my doctor's office, and it got to the point where I would walk in to the doctor's office with my arms up like this. And the nurses all knew me, and they'd be like, and sometimes, I'd have my baby with me. So my mom would have to, or my uncle would have to carry the baby in the car seat. And then they would have to like put it, like sling it over my arm. I'd have to try to carry the baby in and put her down. And then if there was any door that needed opening, I couldn't properly grasp like a doorknob. So I would just walk like this, and the nurses would do everything. And my doctor was just like, I don't know what to do with you anymore, Melissa. So something I forgot to add into the video is that my doctor at around this time, after I had the carpal tunnel and the steroid injections, which were not helping, he looked me dead in the eye and he said, Melissa, when you had your emergency C-section, did they give you Cipro? Which, if you know about fluoroquinolones and the risks with them and all of the damage that they can do to like the extremities and just the nerves, the tendons, I was shocked because most doctors, just like with withdrawal, they're in denial about the effects of Cipro. But my doctor, who was just amazing, he asked me that. And then I was obsessed with that. And I ended up phoning my C-section surgeon. And I was like, I want to know the name of the antibiotic you gave me before my surgery. And it was not Cipro. So I just wanted to add that in as well, because my symptoms were so bad, it was presenting like a Cipro injury. And I said, I want to see a neurologist again. And it's like here in Canada, it's like a 6 to 12 month wait. And I was unwilling to wait. And I was calling every neurologist in my province, and I ended up getting it fast tracked. I was sent to a city 3 hours away. I got nerve conduction tests, and I'm like, guaranteed something will show up because something is not conducting. And everything was normal. And again, nobody could tell me what was wrong. And I'm like, is this an extension of my withdrawal? And again, not the surgeon, not the neurologist, not my doctor, who had figured everything else out for me up to this point, had any idea what was wrong. They couldn't tell me a prognosis. They sent me for physiotherapy. And when I get there, like I was walking with braces. I had carpal tunnel braces on both hands. Um, I think I had one that was like a finger type of brace, and then the other one was a wrist one. And that would still allow me to use like these fingers. And it was just horrible. And so I needed essentially full-time care for 3 months, the last month of my pregnancy, and then 2 months postpartum because of all this stuff. So I go to see physio and she doesn't know what's wrong. And so she's like giving me acupuncture to try to calm down the nerves because like they're stinging fire and they're not innervating my muscles properly because my hands are going limp, but nobody could touch them because it would feel like an electric shock. And it was just so intense. And so she's doing all this like ear seeding and acupuncture. And I'm like, please don't let it be stimulating. Like I was still terrified of withdrawal, but I was so desperate. And you end up just in this push pull and it's just awful. And so I was just got to the point where I was so determined. I'm like, something is not right. Like, and it looked like muscle wasting. Like this here is supposed to be like padded and it was completely flat and looked like it was almost pruning. And I'm like, there's not like proper blood flow or nerve something. But again, nobody could tell me why. So I was doing the exercises the physio gave me, which was like putting elastic bands around my fingers and trying to like open. But the sensations were so abnormal in my hand. But I'm like, I have to start like trying to mimic daily living activities to try to like send the proper signals or something. Like this was my thought process. And so I was putting elastic bands and trying to do this and it just, and then she had me take like a bag clip that has a pretty tight spring on it and try to do this. And I had no strength. Like I couldn't do it. So I had to start with like I had to make just the smallest movement in it that I could. And I could not do this at all. And it was just debilitating. And again, the nerve sensations were so all over the place. The carpal tunnel wasn't fixing it. I was so desperate. I was going and seeing like the local supplement people. And I'm like, what can you give me for nerve problems? I don't know. They didn't think it was diabetes related. They just were at a loss. So I'm taking supplements and I'm just like, everything was just such a disaster. And, again, I was just at a loss, but I started walking because the one thing that helped me through my withdrawal the most, other than my support group, was walking. So I would leave my baby with my mom. I'd go for a walk and I would just pretend to do like daily living. Like I was like an invalid in a lot of ways. I would walk and be like, okay, what is it like to put makeup on? And so I'd be like going like this and trying to like do this. And it just didn't make any sense to anybody, including me. And I was still having problems with not my iron, or was it because I had so much blood loss that I was having my hemoglobin, I think that's what it was low. And so I would, if I'd walk too far, it would feel like I was going to pass out. But again, just the human will and strength and drive is so powerful, especially when it comes to your child, and just the will to survive. And I didn't know how I was going to get through it, but I was determined. And so again, I was just trying to practice and I would get up early and just over and over and over, I would try to pick up a mug. And I'm like, come on, like something needs to connect. Something is just not connecting. And I just did this relentlessly. Every time that my daughter was sleeping, I had elastic bands around my hands and trying to just work it. Like, come on, muscle memory, like whatever is going on, you need to fix, like it needs to fix, and visualizing, using my hands again, and everything that I knew how to do. And again, just walking and trying to get things flowing or connecting. Because then I saw a chiropractor because I thought maybe there was like brachial plexus blockage or something. The nerves that innervate my hands that kind of clump together here. Maybe that was compressed. And so he was like, he would try to grab my hands and I would just pull them away. And he's like, give them here. And he knows me quite well. And I'm like, I can't stand it when you touch me. And he's like, I think your problem's vascular. And then I was worried about that. And he was doing all these nerve assessments. And again, there was nothing conclusive. And it still blows my mind to this day. And all of the work that I was doing, like mentally, and just doing anything that I could do to try to reconnect whatever was disconnected, brain and nerves. And my nerves were firing fine according to the conduction. But I just had these constant rotating sensations of stinging, burning, floppy hands, numbness, just incredible numbness. And it still felt like when I went like this, if I could move this with no weight here, it would feel like there was a huge pad here. Like it felt like my hands were still swollen, but they weren't. And so it was like, yeah, it was a lot of just like sheer will and desire and just being like, okay, I was still in withdrawal at that point, what I considered withdrawal. I hadn't turned the corner at that point. And so I was like, is this all connected to that? Is this central nervous system, peripheral? It was very crazy. And I guess my whole point to this is that if this was truly still remnants of the central nervous system stuff, it presented completely differently. And that could very well have been due to effects of hormones and stuff, but it was very neurological in nature, musculoskeletal, and I still had the movements, but this was very different than what I had gone through in withdrawal, but it was still nervous system related, or it seemed like obviously it was neurological in nature, but just like withdrawal, it didn't fit into any box. It didn't fit into any normal diagnosis. It was very vague, but it was also extremely terrifying. And now it's to the point where if I touch right here, I have slight numbness, like maybe like 1%. And then right in here, there's a patch right here that has an altered sensation. But other than that, I have like my hands are completely normal again. So just another baffling part of this process. And so I just want to say too that if your symptoms, and again, like I don't know if this ended up being hormonal, but I had like all different types of maternal fetal medicine doctors for high risk pregnancy. I had an OBGYN here, and all of these people were involved in the whole care, pregnancy, postpartum, and not one of them had any idea what was wrong. And so if I lump it into the whole nervous system, whatever, peripheral, central, a remnant of withdrawal, and then maybe mixed with the hormones, which is known to make things more complex. It's just like, that is something I had never experienced to that point in my withdrawal. And I was, like I said, 15 months into my second withdrawal and several years off of my first long-term drug. So maybe this doesn't seem relevant, but to me, again, because so much of it is so similar to withdrawal, where nothing shows up in tests, you have this whole vast group of specialists that have no idea. It's not following normal clinical presentation. It's very neurological in nature, but it's off. Then you're definitely not alone. And I'm just so grateful that I've recovered to this degree, both from that and from the withdrawal, or maybe it was all one. I don't know. Another message that I really want to get across through this story is the importance of advocating, because so many people in this journey have intuitive thought processes and feelings, and they're not always following that, or they're questioning that because of something that someone else is telling them, especially a doctor or a family member. And I always want to say, like, go with your intuition. If you know what's happening in your body, maybe not exactly what's happening, but that something isn't right and that something has changed, and be an advocate. Like, that is one thing that has, this whole process of the pregnancy journey, the withdrawal journey, has really, really strengthened for me and taught me, is the importance of self-advocacy. And I am someone who's always been a bit timid. I've always been shy and nervous to stand up to people and to stand up for myself. But this journey has made me such a self-advocate and so strong in my convictions and in my assertiveness, because I truly believe that the way that I advocated for myself, and this was a process for me, the way I advocated for myself in my withdrawal journey and getting answers as far as someone finding a doctor that would acknowledge my suffering and that it was drug induced. I finally found that after many, many, many attempts. And that's how I got on disability for drug induced problems, effects, and also through my pregnancy journey, to get all the testing done, to have enough people hear me and try to tell me and give me an idea of what was going on. Like, I really had to push. And both times that I needed a neurologist, for my movement disorder initially, but then also all this pregnancy induced stuff. Here in Canada, there's so much red tape. Everything is referral based, and the waiting lists are long, but I just pushed and pushed and pushed, and I bumped up 6 to 12 months waiting to 12-month waiting lists both times to like 2 weeks. So it's definitely possible. Be your own advocate. You know your truth. You know what's going on, and you deserve answers and someone who's willing to listen. So I just wanted to also make sure that I was getting that message across in this video as well. I'm trying to provide hope again, and just maybe a framework or a way to maybe understand your own journey and your own symptoms, because I was in that second year at this point, but things were still very rocky in my recovery journey. And then this thing just exploded in my limbs. So let me know your thoughts on this. And I have potentially another interview that I'm setting up. So I'm really excited because I think, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from you guys that those are really important. And I really want to try to capture hopeful stories and interviews of people in all different parts of their journey, whether they're tapering, stabilizing, whether they had a sort of predictable, well, not much of this is predictable, but timeline predictable, and then people who are more protracted and then recover. I'm really trying to get more into that because you guys have given me a lot of feedback that that's what you want. So working on that right now. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, and if your own symptom pattern has drastically changed in any way, if it's scary, you don't understand it, can't make sense of it, you're definitely not alone. Share your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.